Good morning. Welcome to today's class on Mishnah Berurah. We are in Siman 140 Kuf Mem. We are talking about making a break in the blessing of the Torah, and how does that play out? So, if the screen looks a little bit different today, it's because I'm having some technical difficulties, and so hopefully everyone can see me clearly on this camera for today. So we're going to start with the first law over here. Someone who reads the Torah. We're in 140, number 1 over here. Someone who reads the Torah and he becomes silent, like he can't talk. Okay, for whatever reason. So another person who's standing there should take over from where the last person had stopped. Okay, but actually it says there he should take up from where the last person started. And he says a blessing at the beginning and the end. However, according to the Rambam, you don't say a blessing at the beginning. Okay, and the Ramah adds, and nowadays when people read along with the Shliach Tzibur, this is the same thing as well. Okay, so if you can't, for whatever reason, you can't finish. Now this means a couple of things. You had to recite the bracha. So Mishnah Berurah points out, so if you say the bracha and then you can't continue reading, the second person isn't fulfilling their obligation with the brachos. Okay? And so you have to pick up from where the first person started. So what does that mean? So if they didn't start from the same spot where the last person started, and they say the blessing before the reading, and then they say the blessing after the reading, so the first psukim, the first verses that were read by the first guy, they had a blessing in front of them, but not a blessing after them. Okay, so that's one problem. Another issue is if you started from the place where the last person ended, and he said a bracha afterwards, so the first person had a blessing before them, but not after them, and so too everyone after that, they had ones after them, but not before them. Okay, so that's why the idea is to start from the spot where the last one started and say a bracha before them. So you want to have all these verses have a bracha before them and a bracha after them. Okay? So that's part of it. So you want to make sure that you have your own set of verses to read. Okay, so what do? The Shulchan says you say the bracha at the beginning, and you cannot rely on the first bracha that the first person was making when he lost his voice, because the truth is that first person is not saying a blessing to fulfill an obligation of others. It's something that he's just reciting because he is a reader. Okay. That's what every single one reads because that's the rule of reading. So it's not fulfilling an obligation like many other blessings. It's just following the law that we set up. And we learned previously that that's the rule, that you say a blessing before every set of psukim that we read from the Torah. Okay, and so later authorities write that if you make the bracha again, you don't say Baruch Hu again. Okay, you just say the bracha, because that's the main bracha on the Torah. Okay, now the Rambam says you don't, because the Rambam holds that the first bracha you fulfilled your obligation. However, we're not worried about the opinion of the Rambam. Okay, and we see you make another bracha even though someone else is reading for you. Okay, because when the guy, the Shliach Tzibur, was reading in your stead, so we consider it him doing the reading. Okay, so you need to make sure you are following along. Okay, so that is that's the problem, is if you need to make sure that you are following along. All right, second halach over here. Someone who walks up to the Torah to get their aliyah, okay, and they say the blessing before it, and you read some of the verses, and then you recite something unrelated, but that's Torah related, or you say something that's related that is like secular related, that's not considered a break in the continuity, and you don't have to make another bracha. Okay, so the idea is that even though you did make an interruption, it's not considered an interruption like the same thing in the first case where you can't read anymore. Now, the Mishnah explains it doesn't matter how many psukim you read, if it's one, if it's two, okay, but you have to still read at least one pasuk, and then the bracha has its effect taken, unlike the first case. But if you haven't said any, that's what we said. That's what we said doesn't work. Okay. Now, if you didn't go directly into the psukim, then you'd have to make a whole other bracha again. Yes, even if you said even one word, that's not the reading. Okay. Why? Because this is treated like a blessing over a mitzvah. That when you make the blessing, you have to go right into the mitzvah. Otherwise, you lose the blessing. Or it's like a blessing that you recite when you're going to eat something and you haven't eaten it yet. And you have to go and make another blessing again. Okay? So even if you know for a fact that you're not, you're not walking away from the reading itself, you're not going to just forget about it. You just haven't recited any verses yet. So since you haven't started reciting anything, you haven't really started the process of the mitzvah. And so you have to make sure that the blessing is doing something related to it. And that's why this rule works. Okay? However, we're still not allowing you to go ahead and say anything anyway. It's just that as long as it starts. A similar thing to this is like doing a bedikas chametz, where you need to start checking and then not really talk. But if you say something that's related to the checking for chametz, that's something similar. That's me adding on to the Mishnah Berurah. He doesn't say that. So the Shulchan Aruch says that this is not an interruption, and you don't have to make another bracha, which means to say that you would have to make a new bracha if you were going to continue reading, because the blessing that you have recited has not really gone to waste. Okay, it hasn't gone to anything else. Now, if you have decided you're not going to read anymore, that's something else. Okay, so if that's the case, like let's say you read a little bit, and someone goes, no, there's a few more psukim, then you can go back and continue reading, even though you seem to have wanted to finish it. Okay, wanted to finish the reading. So let's say you finish in the wrong spot. Some write the following, okay? And they say, nonetheless, it doesn't matter because in every case, it's going to be the general rule was known as safek bracha lahakal. Now, if we're not sure about whether or not we have to make another bracha, the general rule is don't make another one. Still, it's important that the person making the blessing should intend to complete the entire reading, okay? So, because even if you decide that you don't want to read anymore and you go back to go read some more, you're relying on that first blessing, and that's okay, but you shouldn't really do that. You should really not pause and then go on to something else. Okay, so even though you've paused because you think you're done and someone reminds you that you have more to read, it's still not appropriate to do that. Some people have this custom, this is not in the Mishnah Berurah, but some people have the custom of pointing to where the thing starts and where the thing ends. You don't have to actually point out where it ends, because you just need to keep reading. And as long as you read 3 psukim, you fulfill the obligation. We just developed customs for where we think it's appropriate to end certain things. Third halacha. All right, let's say you get called up to read the Torah, and they show you a place to start reading. I mean, the Gabayim were standing there. They go, you're going to start from this spot right here. Okay? You say the blessing for the reading of the Torah, and you start to read. Okay, that's one setup. Or you haven't started, and then they go, wrong parsha. All right, so they're going to say, so hold on a second, you need to read from a different parsha, and they're going to roll the Sefer Torah a little bit to the right spot. So in this, some people say you don't have to recite another bracha in this case, and some people say that you do need to recite a bracha in this case. So the Mishnah Berurah explains, some say you don't need to recite another bracha because you're still intending to read, it's just that you were in the wrong spot. Okay, that was your point, and it's still there in front of you, like every other mitzvah. Some people say you have to make another bracha because you're trying to read from the wrong parsha. And that reason why is because you didn't intend with your blessing for the right parsha to read from. Okay? And you have to have that intention set out at the outset. And so therefore, you need to make a new bracha on this. So later authorities write that the custom is to be lenient and not say another. Is that we do need to say another blessing again. And it doesn't matter if the place they showed you was in another parsha or if it was in that same section. It's just that you have to roll it a little bit, but you have to make another blessing, and whenever you have to stop, and then they have to roll it. Okay? So that's what we're saying is a problem. Now, so people who take the approach of not to make another bracha, that if they showed you the spot and it's the wrong spot, so that is as long as it's not rolling it, that should be okay. There's no, because we have reason to be lenient. It's that many people write that you should be stringent and say another blessing. So what about if you're in the right parsha but you're not in the right spot? Okay, so this is the right parsha, and you have it open, okay, and they just show you the spot, but it's not the right spot. So in that case, you don't have to make another bracha according to everybody, because you're going to read from this spot in Torah. It's already open, and showing you this the place is not the problem. It's the rolling the Sefer Torah seems to be more of the problem. Okay, and so the idea is that you have in mind to say a blessing on everything that's open in front of you. Okay, so it doesn't matter also if the place that they showed you was above or below. You have to go back. It's just that you're generally in the right spot. It's one of the columns that's open in front of you, like 2 or 3 columns. So you don't have to make another bracha, okay? Because you don't have to, as long as you're not rolling it. Now, if they show you something at the bottom, okay? So so if they're just a few psukim off, let's say it's at the very bottom of the column. Okay, so they show you the very bottom of a column, and then it's going to jump to another spot. We have to roll a little bit. Excuse me. So it says that maybe you should read all the way down to the spot where they showed you at the very bottom. So that way it's like we're showing you, but we showed you at the end here. So that's another possibility to avoid making another bracha. And these are all the rules of not having a break in the Torah. All right. So as I pointed out last time, I want to make this next section over here about the person doing the reading and the person reciting it. These situations. So it's a long one, and I didn't want to break it up. So we're going to have a short class today. And we'll pick up with a longer class for next time, so that way we can get through all that material in one long class. So thank you for joining today, and we will see you next week when we pick up with the laws of the person doing the reading and the laws of the person who reads for another. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.